Hey there, this is Wasim from pixelophy.com, and this week I'm going to show you how to create the rose using only Marvelous Designer. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a circle. And let's just go ahead and rotate this guy and simulate. I'm going to use this guy only for the base of our rose. So I don't want this guy to be moving around. So to make sure it's not moving, I'm just going to go ahead and freeze it. So now, as you can see, we can't interact with it. Then I'll go ahead and design a spiral on the top of this pattern as an interior line. So the middle of the rose will sit on top of that spiral, and then around it we're going to go ahead and add the petals. Alright, so we'll go ahead and create the spiral, and we'll do from the testing that I've done, usually 4 layers of spiral is more than enough. Don't worry about the shape, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can always go back and adjust it. Alright, let's think something like this. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 until we reach the middle. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some curvature to this. Or before we do that, I'm just going to move these points closer, just to get a tighter look for the spiral. All right. Once we're happy with that, just make sure that, you can center it. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some curvature to these. We might need to tweak it a bit once we add the curvatures in. If you think you have too many points, you can go ahead and right click on them and convert to a curvature point. And then if you see, you can even go ahead and delete these guys just to give us a cleaner shape. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new color for the base, something like this. I'm just going to add it to this one so I can see the line easier, because that yellow is really hard to see on the white. Alright, so now you do have these controls in the middle. If you select it, and you can go ahead and tweak the round shape of the spiral to get it nice and clean. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can always experiment. But I want to make sure it's really nice and tight so we can have that nice spiral in the middle. Again, you can always go back and tweak it. Alright, so once we're happy with the shape, I'm going to go ahead and create the rectangle that we are going to stitch on this part. Alright, to create the rectangle, just go ahead and create something like this. If you want to make sure the length of this line fits the spiral, just go ahead, right click and show line length. And if you select this guy, it should tell you, I think you have to select all the segments. Alright, so this is around 850, so I'm going to make sure this is almost the same size. So something around 850 should work. I'm just going to make this 3D area smaller. Alright, so once we are happy with the shape, we'll go ahead and stitch this guy to the spiral. To do that, I'm going to use free stitching. stitch this part, and then I'm going to go ahead and stitch it all around this guy. And then just move this guy closer and hit simulate. It's gonna look like a big mess at first, but just give it a minute. And you can always go in and, tweak the shape. All right. It's gonna help make this easier. Is you can select this, go on the 3D garment, and just use strengthen. And what it's gonna do is gonna just, make the pattern strong, and it's gonna give us that clean shape. So as you can see, we need to make the spiral a bit more tighter, so we'll get a cleaner look. So we're gonna go in and do a couple of tweaks to the spiral. All right, so let's go ahead and move these points closer. I just have a bit of back and forth until we get the perfect shape, and then select the curvature. All right, so move this in. Okay, and now let's go ahead and hit space to simulate again. And as you can see, this is better. We have it tighter. I go ahead and move the points inside even more. So I really want the middle of that rose to be really tight. You can move the segments, not only the lines. And again, we'll go in and make sure these are round. All right, so let's go ahead and simulate again. Yeah, I'm happy with that shape. All right, the other thing we can do is I'm going to go ahead and tweak the shape of this guy to give us a nicer shape. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make these rounded, like this. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just give it a slight in the middle, because then if we just let me frame this easier. You see, this guy can give you a nice flow, but I really want the middle to be higher. So to do that, I'm going to move this guy down, and now I have the middle part, which is higher, and I think we need to make it just a little bit. All right. So it's good as on our initial shape. Next, we'll go ahead and create the petals that going to be around the spiral. I went ahead and did a couple of tweaks to the spiral. I just wanted the middle part to have more curvature. So now that I'm happy with this shape, I'm going to go ahead and create the petals. And for the petals, I'm not going to use your regular petals shape, just because the base is a bit too small to hold the entire petal structure. So I came up with a shape that works pretty good. And we'll do that creating with the polygon. You can use H as a shortcut. And just create a triangle. And then I'm going to go ahead and tweak this to get a rounded shape on the bottom and two rounded shapes like this. So I'm going to stitch. What's going to happen is I'm going to stitch the bottom part to the base. It has to be pretty much the same as the one. And if you look at this is 180, so we can use that. We can make it a bit smaller. So to create the inner line for the stitching, I'm going to go ahead and just do double click here, and then I'm going to round this shape just a tiny bit, move it in place. Let's flip to the 3D view, and I'm going to go ahead and move this into place just to make it easier for Marvelous to do the simulation. I think it might be too big, actually. Something like this might be better. Alright, so let's go ahead and stitch the first petal. So to do that, I'm going to use segment stitching. So I'm going to stitch this part to this part. Okay. And just let me find the place. Yeah. Alright. And now let's go ahead and simulate. And this is what we get for our first petal. Again, if you're having problem making it stand up, just go ahead 3D garment and strengthen, and we'll just pull it up. So first thing we'll notice that this needs to be a bit wider and a bit higher. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, like copy, paste, paste. And I'm going to add the new ones. We can go ahead and select the same line, copy, paste, and just rotate it in a different position. And you can always tweak, the size. Again, copy, paste. I'm going to move this to this side, rotate it a bit, and move it into place. So now, let's go ahead and segment stitch this guy. Just want to make sure the stitching is correct. And this guy to that line. Alright, so this I'm going to rotate and place it here. And the other one, I'm going to move it to the other side. And place that here as well. Right, and just go ahead and simulate. If the normals are flipped, usually it's gonna just mess up the shape just a tiny bit. But again, don't worry about it. Just select them and go strengthen. And just pop these babies up. So the other thing we can do is I don't want the petals to look exactly the same. You can go ahead and tweak them. And we can have, a couple which are, wider. A couple which are a bit smaller. Maybe more of a, heart shape. Like this. Just so we can get a bit of a difference in the shapes. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and create a couple of petals. I think around 10 would be enough. Instead of pausing the video, I went ahead and fast forwarded my progress so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And as you can see, I'm just going ahead and duplicating the petals and then creating the lines. I noticed that the lines were a bit too small, and I also made sure they're a bit larger. Once I have the lines in place, I go ahead and stitch them to the base of each petal, and then I simulate. Once the petals are in their places, I go ahead and select them and just add strengthen to them so they can fit in their places. Now that we have all the petals ready and stitched, I'm going to go ahead and create a new fabric. And I'm just going to give it a nice, rose color. Select all these petals and just apply that. And for this guy as well. And one thing you can do is you can always go in and under the fabric, you can select one of the presets, and each one of them are going to give you a different type of look. So you might get a different simulation if you use cotton or denim or leather, and just go ahead and play around with these, and we'll give you a nice detail. All right. I think the one that worked really good for me was Surge, I think. When the pattern is in strengthen mode, it doesn't matter that much what type of texture or type of material do we have. It does affect it just a tiny bit. But once we remove the strengthen, we go ahead and do unstrengthen, then you can actually see the material that we selected. And you're going to notice that each time we select a different one, and let's say if we go and get the leather, you're going to see this is stiffer. Or if we're going to use satin, you're going to this is going to fold down easier. And again, to reset this, just select them and go into strengthen, and it's just going to, pop them up, and you can always help them up if they don't. So just play around with these until you find something that works for you. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and raise the resolution on these guys so that we have more mesh. So now if you look at the mesh, you're going to see it's really low. So let's just go ahead and select the petals. I don't care about the base because I'm not gonna import that into ZBrush anyhow. And I'm just gonna use something around 5 millimeters is more than enough. I'm just gonna simulate again. You're gonna see it looks much cleaner and much sharper. And if we look at the wireframe, you're gonna see we have lots of polygons now, actually triangles. Alright, so now before we export this, I want to go ahead and select and just go, where was it? I always like to use the help quadrangulate. And this is just going to turn the triangles mesh into quads. You see we have nice quads now, so we don't have to do any retopology or cleaning if you're looking for something really fast, especially for rows. So let's go ahead and export this. So I'm going to select the petals, go export, OBJ selected. I want this to be thin, I want this to be welded, everything else looks good. Just make sure Y is up and just go ahead and OK this. Alright, so I've opened up ZBrush and I'm going to go ahead and import our rows that we just exported from Marvelous Designer. So let's go ahead, import, desktop, rows 01. And if we're going to go ahead and frame this, let me just change the color. This looks a bit weird. And this is because a couple of faces are thin and we don't have any thickness to them. So to fix that, just go under display properties and make sure double is on. And you're going to get this look. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a bit of thickness to this. But before I do that, I want each petal to be on its own polygroup. And I'm going to go under polygroup and auto groups with UV. And this way, if I want to make changes, maybe to this guy, and I want to move some stuff around, I want to smooth it or clean it up, I can do that for each and every petal. So it's really handy. All right, so let's add some thickness to this. Just under geometry, just go to edge loops, and I'm just going to add some thickness to this. Okay. So now if I go ahead and I think it needs to be just a tiny bit thicker. Something like this is good. So now if we go ahead and duplicate, we are going to get something like this, which to be honest doesn't look that natural. It looks stiff as a rose, and usually you don't want that when it comes to roses. You can use this if you're doing a cake, or maybe you want to do a couple of small roses on a dress, or maybe on a sculpture or a building or something like that. That might look okay, but I'm going for a more natural look. I want some folds like that. Might look good in chocolate, to be honest. So if we go ahead and you can see, if you're going to do some chocolate petals, chocolate roses, that looks really good. So it's a good option to do that. But if we're going to have that natural look, I really want some nice folds on the petals. We have to jump back into Marvelous and do a couple of tweaks. So let's head back into Marvelous. And to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I went back and undid the quads, because I noticed that it works a bit faster when I'm working in triangles. And I'm going to put the particle distance back to 10, because I don't want it to be really slow. And then to get that nice folds on the edges, the only thing that we have to do is we're going to get and select these two edges, so the outer edges, and make sure elastic is on, and play around with the ratio and the strength. And now if I go ahead and simulate, it doesn't look like much now, but if I go ahead and select this guy and I give him unstrengthened, it's gonna give me that nice fold look to the edges. And I can show you, if I raise the particle distance, I'm going to go to 4 millimeters, and this is what I was talking about. I want that nice folds on the edges. So I'm just going to go back and strengthen this, just put the particle back to 10, and I'm going to do the same thing for all of them. So select this, elastic on, and play around with these. They all don't have to be the same. So this way we get a different look for each petal. So something like maybe 112. So make sure only the top parts. So elastic 90. So do the same to all of them. Okay, this guy as well. Actually, you can keep the strength of the elastic lower when it comes to the middle parts, because usually these are the fresher and the outer ones have more folds to them. And I'm not going to add any elasticity to the middle spiral. So I'm just going to keep it for the petals. So now if we go ahead and simulate, you're going to get this look, which looks beautiful. So now, final thing to do is I'm going to go ahead and select these guys and give them a particle distance of 4. Yes, I know. It's just telling you it's going to slow down. And the middle part as well, particle of yes. And go ahead and simulate. So even without removing the the strength, I'm going to go ahead and export this. Again, I'm going to turn these into quads. And just give it a second. Now that we have the rows and quads, you can go ahead and export it. Let me just select the petals. So export OBJ selected. Same single object, welded. Make sure Y is up. And into ZBrush. Now duplicate this and import our new rows. So this is the new rows. And again, we have to make sure display properties is double. So, because you might see it like this. Just make sure double is on. And go ahead and auto groups with UV. So this way we have each one on its different UV. Because let's say you want to make these a bit tighter, or you want to, edit them. You can always do that. Really simple when you can also mask by polygroups, and you can do this on the fly. You don't have to hide them. You have that much level of control. Alright, so let's add some thickness to these guys. So under geometry, go to thickness. Let's add some panel loops. So now if I go ahead and add some subdivisions to these guys, it's going to give us this look, which, to be honest, looks much better than what we had before. So this is the one without the folds, which works good as a chocolate rose, and this one which has a more natural feel to it. And just by doing I'm just doing a couple of screenshots. And with this technique, you can go ahead and create different types of roses, and really easy, just by going in and tweaking the shapes of the petals, make them wider, or maybe a different type of spiral, or even this. If you go ahead and tweak this guy, it will give you a different look. Make sure when you're making any changes, you don't have particle sensitivity set to 4, because it's gonna slow your machine, and the simulation it might take a while. I'm just gonna undo that. All right, so I'm gonna just export this into, or actually render this in Keyshot. I'm gonna show you how that looks. All right, here you can see another rose that I did using the same technique that I've showed you. Change this, and as you can see, this has a tighter feel to it in the middle. And if you want that look instead of this one, the only thing you have to do is just go back into Marvelous, and let's select the top edges. So these three, and just add some elastic to them. So once you do that, you're gonna give you that look, and it's gonna give an external. But you can also raise this guy and lower the ratio, and it's gonna give you an inside. So you have to play around with this until you get the exact look. So I think the strength a bit higher. No, maybe higher ratio. No, lower ratio. Yeah, let's go with the lower ratio until you get the look that you are going for. And that's going to give you, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the strengthen, just so you can see it better. It's going to give you that tighter look that I got here. Alright, so let's go ahead and render this in Keyshot. I'm going to use Keyshot Bridge for this one. So under Render, External Renderer, Keyshot. And let's start adding some nice, you can just start play around with, I went ahead and saved one that I thought it worked really fine. As you can see, just gives us really nice roses and really, really fast. So let's go ahead and tweak, maybe get a more red rose feel. So specular and maybe some red here as well. Not too strong to make this a bit darker. Play around with the backscatter. I really hope you found this tutorial helpful, and please go ahead and share, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Alright, see you next week.